Hi, I'm Lisa Bien, and welcome to Bouncing Back. We all live in the same world, but that doesn't mean it treats us all the same way. It makes certain assumptions about who the average person is, even when there's no such thing as the average person. The world assumes that you can walk, talk, and read, for example. It also makes very specific assumptions about how you think. Experiencing the world differently allows people's unique perspectives that can lead them to ideas that can truly change the world. But also dealing with people who have very specific ideas about how people are supposed to think. That can make life very difficult, especially at school. Bouncing back from a learning disability is a lifelong adjustment process. Now, the good news is that with practice, it gets easier. Let's get started. When he was in 7th grade, Grant Schmidt was diagnosed with Auditory Processing Disorder, or APD. Before his diagnosis, Grant was often accused of not paying attention in class, of being disruptive, of never remembering anything that he was told. Once diagnosed, Grant realized that he wasn't being willful or lazy, but that he was trying to approach the world with a set of tools that he just didn't have. After the diagnosis, Grant recognized that he saw the world differently, and he began to approach the change. Today, Grant is an active athlete, runs his own business, Flim Films, and has truly thrived by turning his weaknesses into strengths. Thank you for joining us today, Grant.
Yeah, good to be here.
So excited to have you back on campus.
Yeah, it always feels good. Always feels good to be back on campus.
I know, right? I'm such an owl, love to support our owls. So in your words, I'd love to hear, what is APD? Because truly, until I met you, You'd never know,
right?
Never know.
So Central Auditory Processing Disorder means that information that's of the audio that I would process at a slower rate than a normative person or a standard person, and that can be it can be frustrating. It can be at sometimes dangerous. Like the example I always give to people is if I'm on a sailboat and they yell boom, which means that the boom's cutting across the boat. You know, it could be dangerous if I'm sitting there and going, oh, boom, you know. So,
Right.
Or if you're playing ultimate frisbee and someone says heads, and I'm sitting there going, oh, the frisbee's coming at me. So, living with something is just something that I've had to accept at first, and then I realized that recognizing a weakness is, in a sense, a strength. So I was able to, once embrace it and accept it, I was able to learn how to make the changes in my life that were best for me so that I could perform at my highest level.
Okay, but take us back to when you first learned that you had this. Before the show, we were kind of kidding because I know you, and I said, I really can't even picture you disruptive. And you were like, oh yeah, I was really disruptive.
I was really disruptive. I never got suspended or anything, but it was, and a part of those behavioral issues were not related to CAPD, but at the same time, I think a lot of it, at least initially in 7th grade, was built on a lot of frustrations of being expected to do certain things that I couldn't do, that I felt like I should be able to do, and therefore it was frustrating. It was extremely frustrating. Languages were almost a no-go, and then all these things.
7th grade, correct?
Yeah, this is my whole life.
Okay.
And then up to 7th grade, my parents thought, you know what? Why don't we get him tested? We know he's smart, we know he's intelligent, and we just cannot, for the life of us, figure out why he's not performing at certain levels in certain ways. Because he's really good at some things, but then it's, in some things he's totally, behind the ball, and it's disrupting his whole life.
Right.
So after I got this assessment, you put puzzle pieces together, you have to retain certain information and say it back. I got, high in standard marks across the board except for this CAPD. And at first, that word disorder it feels insulting. It's like, no, I don't.
Right, I don't have a disorder.
No, I don't. Yeah. Maybe your puzzle pieces are wrong or something. But then after that, it was, I was like, okay, I can see where you're coming from. but I was worried that it was going to infringe on me getting my driver's license, me doing certain extreme sports that I wanted to do, me being in certain situations or pursuing certain passions that I wanted to do, in which they would have situations that would demand that I be able to act on a dime. So, but then I realized that just because having that disorder doesn't mean no one was going to stop me from doing certain things. The only way I was going to be stopped from doing certain things is if I recognized that it wasn't going to happen. So at first it was insulting, it was frustrating, it was even more frustrating because it felt like I couldn't. And then after that, I started to look at like, okay, sure, what am I going to do from here? And then identifying the solutions has become a lifelong process that I continue to this day. And it most people would never know. Most people I work with would never know that I have, this.
So that leads me to, I guess, a good question. You say most people would never know, but in the beginning you were talking about some situations where, you're on a sailboat or if you're out and it could be a dangerous situation.
Mm-hmm.
Do you share with people that you have this? Like, would you tell somebody at work that you have this just so that they're aware?
No, well, I would never disclose that I have CAPD because in a way, I don't feel like I have it anymore. You never fully get rid of a disorder. This is a weakness that I have, but the ways in which I've been able to not only cope with it, but learn how to perform at a standard or higher level.
So what are some of the ways? Is it just training you've done yourself?
Yeah, it's a lot of training. It's a lot of like learning how to be in sync with the situations that I'm in. So there's a lot of sort of like tactile or mechanisms that I use to, for instance, pay attention in class, be able to, do pop quizzes, be able to do oral assignments. I did theater a lot. I have to listen for my cues. Things can change. Things are sometimes impromptu.
So are you saying you did things that maybe pushed you to work harder,
Absolutely.
to pay attention?
Yeah.
Okay.
At first it was like, no, I don't have CAPD. I'm going to thrust myself into situations to prove that I don't have it.
Okay.
And really what those did was, it was kind of a fork in the road. I could choose, I have CAPD. I can't do theater. I can't do, extreme sports. I can't put myself in dangerous situations. I can't drive,
Mm-hmm.
I could have taken that route. And instead because of my stubbornness, I put myself right into those situations. And in some situations you can get hurt if you try doing that, But I learned how to I learned how to pay attention. I learned that if someone gives me a list, I have to write it down. If you were to say to me, go pick up milk, eggs, and I want these ones, not these ones, I have to write those down. So that was a big thing. I know I have to put everything in the same place. I can't have my keys in my wallet, my cell phone, and my shoes scattered all over the house, because in the morning, I have to have it in the same place. I'm not functioning in the morning. It's probably normal for a lot of people.
I was going to say, I know a lot of people that are
that
are the same way. We all like that. It's a little bit of a routine that we create.
Right, and so routine is very big for me, and being able to adapt that routine wherever I go, because my job demands that I travel. My job demands that I wear a headset sometimes, so I can't always look at the person's mouth. But I know as soon as I hear that, I have to stop, and it's like, okay, what is this person saying?
Right.
And then I go.
So you read people. So are you looking at my mouth right now?
I'm looking at your lips.
I feel bad for you because I talk so fast. Sorry.
That's something that I at first had to train myself to do.
Mm-hmm.
I'd sit there and I'd be like, okay, I'm watching this person's lips, or I'd be demanded. They would demand that I sit in the front of the class, and
how did that make you feel? Like, you're growing up, it's hard enough, you're 13, 14, there's big years in someone's life, right? That's how old you are when you're in 7th grade, 13, 14, and now they're making you sit in the front of the class.
Oh, it was awful, because one day Grant's in the back of the class, and now the teacher's going.
Well, one day Grant's in the back of the class and he's being disruptive. Now he's in the front and he's paying attention, he's doing
well.
really well.
I'd be in the front and I'd be disruptive. It's whenever someone says that a disorder never goes away, it's like a tattoo, and you can't have it removed. And I was worried, and the teachers didn't a lot of teachers didn't understand what this meant. I've had teachers both in college and all levels of school who, once they know that I have this, and it's not part of their scope of practice to know what CAPD is. So I've had teachers lean forward and start talking to me like I can't hear. I can hear fine.
Right.
You know, you get tested by an audiologist who tests your hearing. I can hear fine. It's just the rate at which I process it can sometimes be slower than standard. So they would start speaking louder to me. Oh, how embarrassing. Be in the front of the class and have a teacher, you know, okay, your homework is, you know, and it was like, oh my God.
Right. So you had to deal with that. But it's interesting, you said having a disorder is like wearing a tattoo. And there's so many things that we could talk about, because when you wear a tattoo, people can see it, you know, pretty much.
Yeah.
Right? And so people know it. People did not know what you had.
Well, first they told me that whenever in an academic setting, that before or after the class, I should always, you know, walk up to the professor or teacher and hand them my pink slip that says, this is what I have. These are the adaptations that you're going to make to your test taking in your class to fit me and my learning style. I quickly learned that was counterproductive. That didn't help. That they would either try coddling me or treating me unfairly, or sort of, they would do certain things in which that would sort of out me in front of the rest of the class. That was very embarrassing. So I realized quickly that I had to change the way I learn, change the way I do things, in order to adapt myself to the class. I'm really good at note taking. A big thing is that with classes, like, you're learning, but you're never learning to learn. You know, a lot of people say, oh, flashcards work for me. A lot of people say reading out loud, that works for me. There's never a time normally in an academic setting in which people learn what works for them. After I got this, I went to Sylvan Learning Center. Half of the time, at least while I was there for years, half of the time is spent
teaching you how to learn.
Learning about learning, and then taking care of your in-time needs,
right.
your homework and such. And that was huge.
That's awesome, Grant. I'm so impressed that you have taken so much and learned, and so many points that we could talk about. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back. All right, thank you. Vanessa Dash has been employed at Temple University for nearly 30 years. She currently works as a Student Services Coordinator for Disability Resources at the Services at Ritter Annex. For the past 9 years, Ms. Dash has coordinated academic support services primarily for students with learning disabilities. Vanessa believes that through hard work, determination, and self-advocacy, and the use of campus resources, students will inevitably fulfill their academic goals. Vanessa, it's absolutely a pleasure to have you with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, listening to Grant's story, it made me realize that I've been teaching here for 10 years, and I've received one notification, one letter. So we guess we can understand why when someone feels that they're now on the front and getting yelled at.
Yeah.
Is that common that students don't come forth to let their professors know that they may have a learning disability?
That's an excellent question. I want to share with you some statistics. There are some national statistics that say 11% of college students have been diagnosed with a disability, some type or another. Unfortunately, out of the 11%, only 3 or 4 actually disclose and connect with the Disability Services Office on campus. So it's not uncustomary for a student to choose not to disclose their whether it's learning or other types of disability-related needs. So it's not strange that you haven't gotten a letter.
Why do you think that is? Do you think it's because is there a stigma? Because you seem like there was a little bit of a stigma with the word disorder. It seemed like
I hate
that word.
I still don't like it. I think it's because I think it's a misnomer. I think that the notion of, I use the term weakness, but I still really haven't found that word that I feel is best appropriate, because I may have a disorder, but I'm not unable to do anything. I haven't found anything that I'm unable, or out of order, to do. So, and I feel that when, let's say I disclose that, like a tattoo, I lift up my arm, like a tattoo.
I can just see you now, Grant, with a big tattoo.
And then people go, oh,
right.
Or if, for instance, I, gave my teacher that slip, and then I'm not in class because I get time and a half to take a test. Now I have all my friends, my classmates going, "You missed the test.
Yeah.
You weren't there. What happened?" And I have to go, "Oh no, I did take it, but I had to take it on my own terms," kind of thing. And now it's forcing me in a position to sort of, disclose that to all of them, and it just makes things awkward. So I felt it was best to, maybe I get a few more points if I do time and a half.
Right.
But I think, like you said, you said 11%, or I think if you tested, because most people never get tested. Most people just assume to be, standard. I think if you tested everybody, I think everybody would have something.
Absolutely.
They would have strengths and they would have weaknesses.
Isn't that
Absolutely.
what we said earlier when we were
Yeah,
talking?
Lisa and I talked about that earlier. And the classroom is a replica of society. In society, most of us have something, okay?
Right.
But again, we encourage students, it's at your discretion whether you disclose or not to other people, but it is essential that you disclose with your faculty member because it's a collaboration. The two of you will work together to set up approved accommodations. So it's a little bit different in college than it is in grade school, because in grade school, it's all hands on deck. So you had a guidance counselor, you had the resource teacher, you have your primary classroom teacher. But in college, we work very strategically and very hard to make sure that your difference, whether it's learning or physical or otherwise, is treated with the utmost confidentiality. So it takes a lot of discussion with the student and the full-time staff, and it should be a very much an ongoing conversation with faculty members and the student to understand how they're impacted by their learning difference or physical difference or what have you. So it's not, it's not a magic bullet or magic potion. It is through dialogue. And you made some excellent points earlier I wanted to speak to. Through self-awareness, self-determination, and self-advocacy, you have every reason to believe that you can succeed in achieving your academic goals. So it's just about knowing how you learn. That was an excellent point that you made earlier. Learning how to learn, knowing how you're predisposed to learning, and building on that. It can create a pathway to success and achievement.
And you only know those things when you're challenged with them.
Absolutely.
If I find that a lot of people with something oftentimes will say things like, I can't, and it's like, okay, even if you, because in the real world, they're not. If I'm on set and the producer comes up to me and I'm a production assistant and they go, Grant, we need this, 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 and this. I need you to go there. I need you to go and tell him to stop. And I'm sitting there and I go, well, hold on. I need something.
Right.
It's not going to work.
Not gonna
They're going
work.
to choose someone else over me. So that sort of self-advocacy and stuff.
Absolutely. It's key.
It's 100. It's key, but it has to come,
That's right.
through you. So I would even tape a little notepad to my arm at some times
Yes,
and be like,
excellent.
and I'm writing it down.
Now, where did you come up with that idea, though? That's a great idea.
It is.
I might steal that for certain things that I do. But seriously,
Or keep it in my pocket. But
that's
little things.
So you've created things that really, really work for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I mean, I had to do it because otherwise I wouldn't perform. It's that simple.
I guess my question too, Vanessa, is you made an excellent point. Whether we're talking about the classroom or we talk globally, we're really talking about everybody has. When we meet anybody, we never know what they have, right?
Yes.
What they're struggling with. I always say that. But Grant was diagnosed when he was in 7th grade. When you're in college, are you done? Like, can you get diagnosed with something? Like, if you're sitting in there, you're studying and you're struggling, can you say, well, maybe I do have something that I'm not learning?
It happens all the time. We have students that engage in our services from every program here, every professional school. We have students from law school, from podiatry, from pharmacy, and you'd be surprised. A lot of students come to us as adults. And one thing I want to really dispel the myth that people with a learning disability are in any wise less than. Oftentimes, students with learning disabilities are exceptionally smart people. There's just a distinct area where there's a decline in the skill set. There's some weaker areas. So, and when I tell students when they first meet with me, I say, okay, get rid of it. Just get rid of all the stigma. Yes, the reality is in some cases there are marginalization, and there's some labeling, but get rid of all that baggage and come on, let's have a real talk about how you learn, what your needs are, and how much you're self-aware. So, and so back to your question, we have people to come at every age, as I've had students older than me come and say something's wrong. I've always been good in school, always been polite, but I just got by. But as you engage in more complex and higher order thinking and learning, really tapping into some critical thinking skills, you crash and burn. You need to connect with resources that can help you build a stronger foundation for being able to demonstrate what you know.
And one thing I'll add to that is, like, when you're in a classroom environment, it's a lecture hall, it's the smaller sections. You're sitting at a desk, you're looking at a board, you have a teacher. And now we have smart boards, and that's great, and we're able to use laptops, and that's great.
Excellent.
But I know at my work, one thing that I recently learned in the whole process of like starting my own business is I said, why am I sitting down all the time? Sitting down makes me sleepy. Sitting down, I get you just get tunnel vision, and
Excellent
then it's hard to pay attention, and you're just it's just you maybe in the office, or it's you and another person. So I'm learning how to be proficient all the time, how to increase my performance. I transitioned to a standing desk.
I love it.
And it's awesome.
I love it.
It's awesome.
You brought up an excellent point. Lisa and I talked earlier about thinking outside the box. Everybody's doesn't benefit from chalk and talk learning. Professors talking at you, writing on the board. But with the invention of and the application of technology, make assumptions. Again, the classroom is a replica of the society. Everybody learns differently. Be creative in teaching. You would be an excellent teacher. He would be. Be creative and make assumptions. You have a person in it that has a short-term attention, okay? Or a person who has some challenges with hearing and processing on the spot. You spoke to that earlier. And so our focus at some point is to work with faculty members to come up with inclusive, creative teaching techniques that can engage a broad range of learners and learning styles.
So if there's a student on campus, I just want to get back to campus a little bit so we can let everybody know what they should do. If you're a student on campus and you think you may be struggling with a learning disability, do we test them here on campus?
There is a
available?
testing center here, but and we also have a list of qualified clinicians who can provide the testing. But I say the first step is come. We are the entity that's deemed to be the professionals in this area, and we will have a conversation with students. We'll walk them through the process of being evaluated if they haven't been. Many students come on campus haven't had a history of benefiting from academic resources. And then there's a segment of students who've never been tested, but they know something's not quite right. So we help them along that process. We offer them guidance, and we connect them with resources to have testing done.
One thing I would add to that is, even as a student at school, going to Temple, at university, I think it's always essential, because a lot of what we study at Temple, or I studied at Temple, was theory. But and then you get out into the real world, and it's like, okay, I know how XLR cables work, I know how all these different things, but it's like, now I have to wrap it, now I have to do it, now I have to, actually perform. And application's a little different. So you may find that you're able to recall things on a test, but you're not able to actually implement them in the field.
Right.
And then when you're in the field, that's when the learning about learning and learning comes into play, and that's when a lot of the learning about yourself, it becomes a sinusoidal relationship.
Yeah.
I just, there's so many wonderful things that I really want to keep going, but they're telling me that I have to wrap up the show, so. God. So, but anyway, we just had a great show. I think that so many good things that came out about today, and I think what Grant, you kept going back to learning about learning and learning about self, and I think at the end of the day, we all need to remember learning is constant, never stops. All the time. I tell my students, you think when you graduate you're done, you're wrong. You're going to keep going. So, thank you for helping me learn, and I appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a common belief that were he alive today, Albert Einstein would have been diagnosed with ADHD or autism. Agatha Christie, one of the most famous writers of all time, was digraphic and had difficulties with word order and her handwriting. Some people achieve true greatness, not in spite of being different, but because of it. They don't just bounce back, they bounce above and beyond. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you next time on Bouncing Back.